Going again. Excellent. Welcome everybody to the deep dive of the SkyGlass watch list. Very happy to have you all here today. By show of hands, if you want to put your video on, great. If you want to just keep it and give me a thumbs up with a little emojis or whatever they're called, reaction, I guess, in the Zoom world, you can do that. Who's been through my intro class? Boom, 100%. Love that. Okay, good. And how long have you been using SkyGlass? More than 6 months? And less than 6 months? Okay, less than a month. Any real newbies? Okay, a couple months. Great, good. Okay, and more. So I'll tell you this while the chat is starting to fill up. So I've noticed I'm having a little bit of hard time, multitasking with the chat especially. So you're welcome to, I'd love to have feedback in the chat because that gets recorded and I can review that later. But if you have a question, you can drop it in the chat. But I invite someone to prompt me and say, hey, there's a chat question or whatever, just so I can pull my focus because I missed a couple in the last session. Okay, great. So last question before we get started. How big is your current watch list? Less than 100? Less than 100, okay. More than 100? We got a few, I'm sure. More than 100? More than 500? More than 1,000? Cool. Yeah, anybody that's got, well, this is a good question. How many folks have downloaded and are utilizing or building off of Monkey's List? Okay, so if you're there, then you're at 1,300, I think, is the last count for him. Okay, good. Question about, okay, so Thomas, if you want, we can talk about where to get the monkey list, if you're interested in that. All right, let me make a note of that. And somebody prompt me if I don't get to it. Where can I make a note there? All right.
Oh, I have it loaded already.
Okay.
Mine, so yeah, it just keeps downloading all the time when I bring it up.
Yeah, I'll talk about how to optimize that. Yeah, okay. Not a problem. Okay, great. Okay, cool. So format for today, most of you guys are familiar with this anyway. You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question and interrupt me, or just wait till I get to the end of the thing. We'll do questions throughout. It's not a problem. And I've already talked about the chat window. All right, so let me share my screen and we'll review the boom, there we go. Boom. And okay, we're going to review the oh, hold on a second. Let me get my screen all sorted out here. Boom. Okay, great. I can see everybody. All right, so today okay, cool. Thanks, Jim. All right. And let me turn the participants off. Let me get that over here. All right, good. So let me get a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We get 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. All right, great. Good attendance today. All right. So everybody see my screen okay? Okay, great. And the mouse size, we got that sized okay? Everybody can see the mouse move around? Excellent. Okay, so as stated, we're going to be doing the deep dive into the watch list. Today's topics will include the various ways to add an aircraft to your watch list. We'll talk about go through all the aircraft watch list. The aircraft itself has a bunch of buttons. We'll go through that. We'll go through all of the functionality of the Watchlist Group header and all those functions. Then we'll also take a very precise and coverage of the Watchlist header, the buttons itself, and the main header and the auxiliary header, and how to pop that up. I will probably cover the secondary searches a few times, but I'll definitely talk deeply about the secondary searches. That's really what slows down the list, especially if you get it from Monkey. He's got a bunch of secondary searches enabled, and I'll go deep into that. And then we'll do a quick exercise of adding from the database as a group. I will note here that I do have a deep dive on the database coming up in a couple of weeks. So if you're interested in the database, I will cover that just quickly here, super basics, but we can go in a deep dive of that later. And again, as always, Q&A is welcome at any time. Okay. Excellent. All right, so let's get into it. Any questions or thoughts before I start? All right, good. I'll keep going. Okay, so
Can I ask a quick question?
yes, please. Go right ahead,
I-
Crystal.
How do you pronounce your name, your first name?
It's Goa. It's
Thank
remarkably
you.
simple. It's just like it sounds and just like it spells. Most people try and put a Y in there and say, is it Goya? But no, it's just Goa.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. So I've got my current watch list going here. And so the first thing I'm going to do, just so we can get things sort of started, is I'm going to we'll cover, yeah, let me burn the list. I'm going to burn my watch list. So as I'll cover this in more detail later, we've got the Watchlist header. How's that visibility wise? Should I make this larger? Make it bigger? No, it's okay. All right. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is in the Watchlist header, the far right-hand button has a little pop-up. That's how you bring up or pop down the auxiliary. And that's where the sort of extra features are. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear my list. And it gives you a warning. It says you should want to clear it. So yep, I'm going to clear it. And that's going to just wipe it completely. And as most of you remember from the intro training, now I can clear the field with the other burn button in the main stack. I'm going to turn off the pop-up help. I don't think that's needed for today. And just so we're starting with something super clean. Okay, so just so that it's covered for anyone that might be watching this recording, to open up the watch list is this banner icon with the double stars in the auxiliary button stack. Auxiliary button stack being this main group right to the left of the main stack. So that's how you access the watch list. And that'll give you kind of your first clue on watch list is the banner is the SkyGlass centric sort of, this is related to a watch list. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is I'm going to load some traffic. We're just going to get a snapshot of the military flights that are up. I'm in mil mode right now. And there's basically 3 ways to get aircraft on your watch list. First is from the HUD. And I did notice in the recordings, when you watch the recording, I'm stuck on the top right. But I think that this part of the HUD should be visible for folks. Anyway, so again, here's your first indicator. We've got an icon that's got a banner on it. If it's white, that means it's not on your watch list. If you click on it, it will turn green and be on your watch list. So we got our first aircraft added, this top cat. It's our R135. And of course, you'll notice that watch lists have, or watch list aircraft have a distinct background and octagon border color. The profile icon will remain the same, but the background will change. Does someone have a question?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
When you burn the list, does that wipe the list clean or just reset it?
It clears the list.
So you start with when you burn the list, it empties everything out and you start over again.
Start from scratch. Yes.
Correct. Thank you.
Yes. It does not clear if you've put something up in the cloud on the SkyGlass server. So that's still safe. Okay. One other distinction while we're talking about burning and clearing and stuff, if you do a full burn from the preferences panel, which is the way to sort of reset SkyGlass to the defaults, your watch list is separate. That's a separate process and that's safe. So you can reset you can do a full burn in SkyGlass to get you back to your defaults, and your watch list will be maintained through that process. Okay. All right. So let's see, adding ways to add to the watch list. The other way, which may be helpful, is via the type list panel when you have a type enabled. So I just brought up my type list panel here. That is an R135. So let me pull the R135s. Where are you? Let me sort by alpha and then find the Rs. Boom. Oh, there's just one aircraft. Well, that's not very exciting. All right, let me do that differently. Oh, let me pick the Q4. Okay, great. So, so what I've done is I have picked a type in the type list panel, which gives us this little extra pop out of all the different aircraft. And again, you see that there's a banner icon there. So we can click on that banner and it will add it to the watch list. So this is the second way, is through the type list aircraft list panel. Okay. And my favorite way, and I think this is probably the easiest for everybody, is to right click. If you see an aircraft that's already painted in the field, you'll right click on it. Boom, it's on the watch list. Another right click. And well, let's see if we reload that. Oh, I guess you can't do that. All right. So yeah, the double right click won't do it. Won't remove it. You can just add, but you can remove it from the watch list, and we'll talk about that in a little second. All right, so let me just add a few more of some different types, just so we get a quickie little starter list going here. All right. And yeah, that's probably a good enough start for now. Okay. Any questions up to this point? All right, we'll keep moving forward. Okay, great. Oh, the final way to add aircraft is via, manually from a hex code. All right, so let me just go copy this hex code from the HUD. I'm clicking on the hex code in the HUD, and there's a little green box around it, which puts it on my clipboard. And so the process is from the watch list auxiliary header. Okay, and that should be visible as a default. The default state should have the auxiliary header from the watch list up there. Click on the little plus sign. That's going to bring up this little pop-up. Add an ICO hex code or codes. You can actually add multiple just with a comma in between. So you paste that, put plus, and then boom, that's going to be on your watch list now. So that's sort of all the ways to add to the watch list, unless you're doing it from the database or some other functionality importing, but we'll talk about all those in a bit.
Also from the banner in the HUD.
Right, and the banner in the HUD. Yes, sir. Thank you, Ren. I think that's the first time I've heard your voice.
I think I said something the other day, but
All right, good enough. Well, it's always nice to hear. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's talk about the different entries themselves. So once you have something listed on the watch list and you see the in the watch list is open and you've got the entries here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a burn, and so that's going to clear the field. Important to know, even though it's cleared from the if your watch list is open, it will always load from a burn. So when I hit the burn in the auxiliary button stack, it's going to clear the field, remove all the aircraft that were loaded before. But since the watch list is open, it's going to automatically just reload that watch list. Okay. If you close the watch list and do a burn, then you're at a real, at a fresh state. And then as soon as you open your watch list, it's going to go and try and load those aircraft. Okay. It's great that I actually pulled a C-17 that's not grabbing in the first load, because that we'll talk more about the secondary search in a second, but that's our example that we're going to work with. Okay, so let me make this absurdly large, so that's really easy for everybody to see. Okay, great. So there are two modes to viewing the watch list, the list itself. There's sort of the standard mode or the normal mode, and then there is a location kind of a mode. And as you may have heard before, anything that's sort of location-based or map-based within SkyGlass has this little location reverse teardrop. So I'll just cover that now. When you click on that, it's going to change the view and give you a distance, normally a vector, direction, and then the last known location. And that's via a reverse geocode lookup. Basically, it says what's the nearest metropolitan area that's recognizable and gives you a vector and a distance from it. Okay, so then you can kind of quickly, go through the list and get a feel for where those aircraft are. All right, so I'm going to click on this reverse teardrop button again. So we'll go back to normal viewing mode. And So each aircraft watch list entry has 3 fields when you're in normal mode. The first one is the label. And depending on how you've added that to the watch list, it may have a different label that's been inherited. Okay. If you add by right-clicking around on the field or in the banner, I'm sorry, in the HUD banner or the type list banner, it's going to pull the hex code and drop that in as the default label. As I mentioned it, we'll talk about this when we get to the database. There is another way to add singly from the database result window, but again, that's just a banner icon. Okay, so the first field is the aircraft hex, or it's the label. Default in this case is the hex code. The next field is the last call sign that was used. And again, call signs, especially with military aircraft, will change via each flight or sometimes mid-flight. And then the last field is the aircraft type. That should pretty much remain consistent. Okay. And then, of course, we've got the aircraft profile icon on the far left. And then you'll notice there are some little chevrons which indicate just so the last time it was loaded, if it was flying up or down. I'm going to just turn that into auto refresh mode. And so we get a load here. Trying to get some colors. Okay, so it looks like everybody's level right now. I'm not seeing any reds or greens for up and down. Okay, excellent. So moving across, the first button that you'll notice is the banner with a minus sign. That's to remove it from the watch list. You'll notice that that's a 2-step process. So there's a little bit of a safety for folks. If you click on it once, it moves it into its own deleted group. And you'll notice that the deleted is red, so that's actually hidden from view. If you want to actually delete it, then you can click on that button again, and that'll remove it and go poof from the watch list. If that was a mistake and you want to bring it back, a couple different ways. You can click on it, drag it back into the group that it was in, and then once that group has no more, the deleted group has no more entries in it, then that group will be removed from view. All right. Next one over is the secondary search icon. That is the magnifying glass with a plus sign. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Let me get through the basics. Next one is the edit. This is probably where you're going to want to definitely get familiar with this little piece of paper with a pencil. Click on that, and we'll pull up a little pop-up window, which you can make some changes to that watch list entry. So it'll tell you who you're making changes to. We got edit watch list item SOTA 81, which is a K35R. And this first one is the label. So you can edit, change the label. So this is a K35R. So this is going to be probably a fueler, say fueler 1. And now, and so let me just save that so we can just do one thing at a time. Click save, and you can see that that label has now been updated to whatever I entered into that edit box. So let's bring up the edit box again, and let's do some group stuff. Okay, so you can assign the group from here. This drop down will show all current groups. If you're starting from scratch, let's add a group. So click on the plus sign next to the group and enter a new group name. So let's say this is fuelers, and we hit save. And now that entry, that aircraft has been moved into that group. If I click on the drop down, now you can see we've got a going list of different groups available to us. Okay, and then we can get out of this window by closing it or saving it. Okay, and again, moving aircraft to different groups, we can grab from the icon itself and drag it into that list. I will tell you there's a little bit of an anomaly. Doesn't always, well, it will always, the drag and drop works perfectly if you've moved from the top of that into the list. Okay, if you move up to the list, that doesn't always catch it. So if I wanted to move this fueler into this list, I'd want to come up and then down, and then it'll drop back in. Just a little anomaly, a bug I haven't been able to fix yet. Okay, so let me bring this back into the fuelers. Let's work that process again. So let's do the Q4 now. I'm going to click on the edit button and I'm going to create a new group by clicking on the plus sign and say, this is a Snoopy recon, click save. Now we've got a new group and that Forte 10 has been dropped in. So let's make this, let me add a label to this so you can see that again. So Q4, let's say this is a Q day. All right, you can also just hit enter from that label change and that'll close that list as well. So a little quick way to do that. Okay, perfect. Last thing or last couple of things. So moving further to the right, you can turn on traces and paint the trace of each individual aircraft in your watch list by the trace icon there. Let's put that guy center, turn the trace, and you can see that the trace is lit the icon turns green, so that trace is painted. And yeah, there it is. Okay, great. And it'll turn on the traces pop-up panel as well as activate it in the main button stack. Okay, and the final one is this little information window. Click on that and it's going to go out to the database and grab all those database fields. I had already loaded the database in preparation for this, so if you haven't done that, you'll have to say, oh, you want to load the database, load it up, etc. For most military aircraft, the database is pretty light on data. Basically, you're going to get the hex code, the registration, the class, and the type, but all the rest of it's going to be NA. Okay. We'll also just quickly note, if this is another way to put stuff on your clipboard, like I've covered in the intro, anywhere that if you hover over something and either a little green box encircles that, or it actually turns green, or in this case, we've got a little clipboard icon that pops up over that field. Clicking on that text will then drop that information onto the clipboard. So it's an easy way to, move around outside of SkyGlass to a website or whatever, if you're doing searches, etc. All right. So let me pause there. Any questions on the watch list entry itself? Nope. Okay, great. All right. So let me start the discussion on the secondary searches. All right. So in the SkyGlass, most of you know this, I source the data from ADSB Exchange, and who are fabulous people, by the way. And, to get a little technical, it's an API that I call, and I can hit that API in a bunch of different ways. And, over time, as they've grown, there's different aspects of it. They're version 1, version 2, all this kind of thing. Anyway, with the watch list, it basically will go and grab it'll do an API call with a bunch of hex codes. I think I've got it limited right now. It goes and does it in groups of 100 or 500, something like that. So, and the returns are super fast, and I get them in bulk, so they're easy to process and very fast. But when you do a load and you see that pop-up window come up and it sort of chunks along, you're knowing it's grabbing hundreds at a time. The limitation, though, is it's sort of a narrow net, meaning if that aircraft is reporting and broadcasting via the ADSB protocol, 1090 megahertz, that's what their transponder is, in that mode, then it's going to be included in those returns. Okay, not all aircraft fly in that mode or are returned in that type of query. So in order to catch those outliers, we created a secondary search. So as you can see from our list here, this C-17, this Reach 4576, that we know it's flying because we just pulled it from a live view, right? But it's somehow not getting returned in this list. So what we can do is turn on the secondary searches with the plus sign magnifying glass, and I'm going to reload, and lo and behold, and you may have seen that C-17 popped right up. Was it here? Yeah. So secondary search has been activated, and that casts a wider net Just for giggles, let's see how this guy's reporting. So I'm going to turn on, it's MLAT. Yeah, for some reason, C-17s are one of those aircraft that typically don't get included in the basic list or the basic return, the standard return. So if that happens to you, you can turn on the secondary search. Now, there is a performance hit, and this speaks to Monkey's List and why it's so slow, etc. The secondary searches, which have the widest net, it catches all aircraft if they're in the ADS-B exchange system. I can only do those one by one. So imagine if you've got 1,000 aircraft and I got to go ask it a question in the API and wait for its response, go ask it, and it takes a long time. It can really slow down if you've got lots of aircraft on secondary searches. So anywhere that you see secondary search icons, you can do some sort of toggles and flips. So as an example, let's go to the fuelers, and in the fueler header, which is the group entry itself, we see that there's a secondary search icon. If I click on that, you'll notice they all turned green. Okay, it's because they were all not green before. They were all not enabled for secondary search. So this is a flip, meaning if it is enabled, it'll disable it. If it's already enabled, it'll disable that. All right, let me show you that example. So in the unassigned group, we've got a few that are not enabled, and we've got the one that is enabled. I'm going to click on that, and it flipped. Okay. So this seemed to be practical at the time I was doing it and making this. I'd like to get your feedback now, because my thinking is maybe I should just turn them all off and turn them back on for everything instead of being this kind of quasi, if it's on, it's now off, and flip things around. What do you guys think? Should I keep it as is? Raise your hand. Okay, Ren likes it. Okay. And should I change it to be a full sweep? And if anything is there, okay, so we got Jim that says we should make it a little bit simpler. Okay, maybe I will make that a preference, sort of a deeper preference for people. Okay, cool. Thank you for that feedback. Excellent.
What is the
Yes.
Q4? A
Say again?
drone? What's a Q4? A drone?
Yes, sir. Yep, that's those unmanned larger aircraft, a little bit smaller than a Cessna, I think, much smaller profile, but they do have a healthy wingspan, surprisingly. I've never seen one up close, but I've seen pictures. That'd be a
Okay.
cool thing to see, actually. Okay, any questions while we're in a pause here? Okay, so secondary searches, again, let me flip that toggle as well. Secondary searches take more time. So that's why things can move slowly. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the secondary search. I'm going to burn, just so I'm kind of starting from scratch. What I want is I want a list that has some aircraft that are active and some not, so we can see this in action now. Okay. Interesting now, the C-17 is actually coming in the list where it wasn't before. Again, so this is you know, we've coded around it, or I've tried to code around it, but this is something I don't have control over. You know, this is the ADS-B exchange feed. It may have been because that feeder or that aircraft is being picked up by a different feeder and is moved from or away from MLAT. Hard to tell. But anyway, for our purposes, we still have a good example here. If the aircraft is, yes, someone have a question?
The A400 is descending?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, you can see that icon has changed now. Let me make that a little bigger for people. Yeah, so the triangle flips and turns red for descending, and if it's climbing, it'll be green, and if it's level flight, it's just got this sort of basic gray. Okay, so what I was getting to is the difference between this aircraft is flying, or it's not actually flying, or it's not in the returns. This C-17, you can see the entry is gray. That means it's not in the returns. We know this one's flying, but it's not in the returns right now, which will lead me into, well, let me cover this now. Yeah, what the heck? So in the Watchlist header, we've got a little aircraft icon here next to the trace and next to the expand collapse toggle. And if we click on that and it turns green, it's going to limit the view, what the watch list includes to only those aircraft that are flying. Okay. When you've got a huge list, you're going to want this on, and because then it keeps the list nice and tight and is only showing what's listed, not every aircraft that you've got in the list. All right. So if I disable that, you can see that entry that is not showing as returned technically, or, maybe a ground aircraft or whatever. It's not, it's now back in the list. Okay. So let me do this. I'm going to create a new group, and we'll just call this example and save. All right, perfect. So now you'll notice there's a color shift in the example group versus these others. And it's because this example group has no aircraft that are active in it. So it'll be gray. All right. So if you were to collapse these groups by clicking on the chevron, double chevrons, you'll see that, very quickly you can just sort of look at the list and see exactly what aircraft groups have aircraft that are active and which ones do not. While we're here, the double chevron in the watchlist group header, the watchlist header will toggle all groups to collapse or expand. I tend to, if I've got a big heavy list, tend to keep things nice and collapsed. And then if I'm, curious, then I can go and look and expand that group and check it out, etc. Okay, so let me keep going with the watchlist group header itself. So as I've discussed, we've got a color differentiation between if it's got an aircraft that's flying or not. You can edit the group name by clicking on the edit button here, and then it's got a somewhat different edit window, but you can change the label for that group simply. If you want to burn the group, I'm not going to do that now, but you can click on the burn in the group header, and that will basically remove all those aircraft. And I believe, yeah, we get a nice, hey, are you sure you want to do this? And if you, let me cancel that and do it from a different group here. Let's do the Q4. Okay, I'm going to burn Q4. It's going to say, you're about to delete the Snoopy group and it's one aircraft. Please confirm. And notice there's that was the idiot check of like, I didn't want to do this. If you say yes, it doesn't move those aircraft into the deleted group. They're gone now. Okay. All right. Moving along. Again, we talked about the toggle for the secondary search. If you want to paint traces for all of the group, you can do that here. And then this is the quick way to run a flight history for that entire group. All right. If we've got time at the end and you all are interested, I can cover flight history. I'll do a deep dive on this later. But if we want to cover it and we have some time today, just somebody say flight history and I'll talk about that. Okay, and then in the last field here is just a count of how many aircraft of that group are up and what the total count of that group is. And then you've got your collapse, expand toggle. Keep in mind, like the type list panel, if you click on the group header itself with your left button, you'll move that group into isolate mode, and it'll turn blue. So all the other aircraft are now hidden from view, and the only ones that you're seeing are these the group that you have isolated. Okay, if you click on it again with your left, that'll disable that. If you right click, it's going to hide those aircraft. So again, we've got an isolate hide functionality by group. All right, and clicking either right clicking or left clicking or repeating that action, you'll get it back to to the default state. Let's say you have a few things disabled, enabled, and you're like, I don't want to go through and click, or something doesn't seem right. In the auxiliary header of the watch list, you've got two arrows in a circle that will reset all of the group isolate hide states. So I'll click on that and you'll see all that stuff goes away. And now you're back to your standard watch list load. Okay. If you've got a really long list and some of these things are like off screen, meaning they're not showing in your first, however wide you've made it, you may not, thus things don't look right. You may have one that's hidden, or probably you're isolated for just that group and it doesn't seem right. So that's how you kind of clear the field, clear all the settings, and then you'll be back to the default normal watch list view.
Question?
Yes, sir.
I've got Monkey's list, of course. And I know it's a very big list. And if I open it up, I know how to block out the ones with the, putting blue on it just to show that group. But if I don't have anything highlighted on Monkey's list at all, I not only get everything on Monkey's list, but everything else. So where are the aircraft coming from that aren't on Monkey's list?
Okay, you probably have the auto refresh on and military mode.
Okay.
So that's this
that'll
one here.
pick up
So
everything.
right now I don't have any auto refresh on. Okay. I have only the monkey. I'm sorry. I only have my watch list open, but I've only taken a snapshot of that. Let me talk about this too. So at the top of the auxiliary button stack, I feel bad because I didn't cover this in the intro yesterday. I keep forgetting. This has, maybe I did. Anyway, this shows how long ago it was loaded. Okay, so these aircraft positions are now almost 2 minutes old. All right, so I'm going to turn on the auto refresh just for the watch list, and you'll see that auto refresh button turns green, and now I've got this little pie clocky thing that's counting down. Okay, you probably, Florida, have turned on the auto refresh on the main button stack.
Yes.
Okay, which if that's on, then it's going to load all the military aircraft, or if you're in standard mode, all those defined by your search radius. And will also, at the end of the auto refresh cycle, it also loads the watch list because the watch list is open. Okay, so what you'll want to do is
Turn that off.
You can do two things. You can turn it off and then burn, or burn does the same thing. Burn will disable auto refresh in the main stack.
Got it.
So the quick one button approach. But since you have your watch list open, so then what you'll want to do is turn the auto refresh on for the watch list, and then that will. Cool.
Got it. Beautiful.
Excellent question. Good. Okay, so let's keep that on for now. Let's see here. So we've gone through the group headers, all the buttons. We've gone through the all the different aircraft entries. You may have already figured out if you click on the entry, it will go to that aircraft. If the aircraft isn't flying, but there is a last known location, then it will pop to that location. Okay, so again, any aircraft entry, you click on it itself and you'll pop around. You'll see it zooms to those aircraft or its last known location. Okay, let's see here. All right, we've talked about how to change the names. Let's see, anything I know, we covered all that. Okay, great. So now let me walk through the watch list header and we'll just cover all the buttons and I'll do a little bit of review. Okay, so in the main stack here, or the main watch list header, we've got a close button. Click on that, we'll close the watch list, or you can click on the watch list button in the auxiliary button stack. That will also close it down. Then we have our label here, and then we've got a count. So this is the count for the entire watch list. So right now it's pretty low. We got 5 of 7 loaded or that are active. The big gear icon in the header is basically just kind of the reload. If you just want to, force a reload, it's analogous to the top button in the main button stack. It's a snapshot. Okay, it's going to just instantly exercise that load for the list. Auto refresh, we've talked about. Clicking on that will turn on auto refresh. it will pop the auto refresh sub panel if it's not already up, and then give you a visual indicator and sort of this countdown pie clock, telling you how long we've got until the next refresh. All right, next one is the reverse teardrop, which is the location toggle flip for how you're seeing the list versus last known location or the standard view. Next one is traces. So you can turn on traces for all aircraft in your list with one button. That's this one here. Why not do it? And you'll notice then the group headers as well as the aircraft also show that. Okay. Clicking it again will disable all and reset those buttons as well. All right. Clicking on the, nobody's asked yet, but I'll just say, this is one thing I just sort of hadn't cleaned up in the code. You'll see some of these are yellow versus gray. The icons are consistent, but in the coding, when I first write it, you know, I give it a color, and then when it goes back and refreshes the states and things like that, assigns it, then it will change that color. So if you do a reload, then everything will normalize. But if you switched the viewing state, there's a little bit of a thing I haven't quite finished there. Okay, so aircraft show what's flying. That's very, very useful. I like to keep that on. And then this last, the second last button is the collapse expand for all groups toggle. And that does what it says. And then this last one is the show hide of the auxiliary functions in the Watchlist header. All right, so let me pause there for questions. Take a drink. Any clarification needed on anything? Okay. All right, moving forward. All right, so let me expand the groups so we see everybody. Let me turn off the hide non-flying aircraft so we get a good list here. Let me go back into standard mode. All right, and what I would like to do is I'm just going to add some more aircraft. So I'm going to pull a list here, and let's pop in some T-38s. And I'm just randomizing here. We got a PAT flight. You'll notice that this load is a little slower than normal. I don't know if you can really tell the speed difference, but there's some secondary queries that happen to the internal database if the database is loaded. Okay. You may or may not notice it, but I noticed the speed hit. Anyway, so I'm just, and again, that's only when the first aircraft is painted, or when it's initially rendered, and then on the updates, the refreshes are quite fast. But anyway, okay, so let me buff out the list here, grab a few more. Anybody interesting? Let's grab that C-17 and that B-37. All right, great. Okay, and I'm going to burn. So I'm going to clear the field, and now we'll get the list reloaded here. All right. So about resize. You'll notice we've got 3 buttons in the resize sort of corner of this window. The main one is similar to all of the other ones that resize. It basically resizes the window in total. You'll notice as you get about halfway, the width of about half of the next column, it will automatically switch columns and then redistribute all of the buttons, all of the entries to fit those, or to, you know, it normally balances them all out for that number of columns. Okay. If you click on the upper 2 chevrons pointing up in this little grouping here, it's going to automatically figure out how many columns you need to show all the aircraft that you have in your list, and then pop it to that view. Okay. And then the lower chevron icons will minimize the list. So it's kind of a minimize, maximize, but it's kind of a smart maximize. All right. So let me show you that again. Let me make this more absurdly large. Okay, and then I'll maximize. I'm trying to get this thing to force to, it's not wanting to go to 2 columns. Well, I'll show that later. We'll get, when we flush the list out to the big list, that'll be more appropriate or more understandable. Okay, so that covers the expand and contract. Incidentally, if you double click on the large handle, does the same thing, minimizes, double click again, it's going to maximize. Ren, did you know that one? He knows almost everything. I'm trying to find those.
No, you told me that one 6 months ago. So
Okay. Well, you got a good memory. All right, good. Okay, so now let me go through the buttons in the auxiliary watch list header, this grouping here. All right, so as we've talked about before, you can manually add aircraft to the watch list via hex code, and that's with this button here. The next one is the BackTrack, which is who all knows about what a BackTrack is? We've experimented with BackTrack. Few of us, a few of you don't. Okay, cool. So as an example, if you've gotten a hex code from somewhere else, and so you haven't added it from a live session, like from the database or something else, or you've imported it from somebody, and it wasn't known before, the BackTrack will go back in time by day and troll for the last known position of that aircraft. Okay, so I use this a lot when I've added a bunch of stuff from the watch list or from the database, and who knows when the last time that aircraft was flying. You can adjust the depth of the BackTrack in the preferences. So let me pull up the preferences, the big gear icon, and you've got this BackTrack slider here. The default's going to be 60 days, so it'll look back 2 months, but you can shorten that and make that out to 2 years. Okay, very cool. So again, you're not going to see the impact of that unless you're looking at the, in last known location mode. Okay, but that's a way to go back in time. One way to go back in time and find the last known position of that aircraft. Okay, next one. This is what I wanted to show you. All right, so this next one, sort of like 2 windows on top of each other. This is the auto group by type button. So if you have aircraft that are unassigned, I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, when you add an aircraft to the list in a generic or general way, it's going to pop immediately into an unassigned group. So it's something that hasn't been assigned yet. If you want to assign, automatically regroup anything that's in the unassigned list by type, that's this button here. So I'll do it now. Click on that button and you'll see now everything that was in the unassigned group has now been moved into a new group, and the new group name is the type. So now all the C-17s and the K-35R, everybody's in their own type group. All right. I thought this was pretty cool. It seemed like this is what most people were kind of doing. It's like, I want to see things by their mission type, usually defined by the aircraft type, so etc. Okay, cool. And the next one is the database icon. So what this does is, let's say you have added an aircraft from the hex code, and meaning it hasn't been loaded live. If you've right-clicked on it from the field, it already knows the aircraft type and the call sign, because that's, it was live, it was available in the moment. If you're adding from a hex code or from some other way, from an import that doesn't have those pieces of information, then using this icon, the database lookup, it will go, and if the database is not loaded, it will load the database, and then it will go out and search for all those hex codes and find their type and pull it in. Again, call sign, it's not going to grab because the last known flying, I could probably build that, but it doesn't seem as appropriate. Anyway, the type is really the important piece, and go out, grab that type and populate it into the list here. Okay. All right, I'm going to skip over these. We'll cover those in general in a second. Next one we've already talked about. This will clear any isolate or hide assignments that you have made to the groups. This next one, and for those with Monkey's List, this is the way to put it in a turbo mode immediately. This will clear all secondary searches from the entire list. Okay. I've noticed, depending on what you've done or how big the list is, if it's 1,000 long, it may be difficult to like ferret out all those that have secondary searches on. So this basically wipes. It's a single button function. It wipes all secondary searches from the list. There is no way to restore those, right? But this is a way to just clear them fast. Okay, and we already talked about this as well. This is how you burn the entire list, basically clean it to start over. Okay. All right. So let's talk about importing and exporting. Let me pause there for questions. Any questions? All right. Dead silence. We'll move forward. Excellent. Okay. All right. So the two folders, you can import and export your watch list. Seems simple. Clicking on the purple one, the chevrons up, that's going to be the export. If you have not already defined a folder to be putting your watch lists, then it will prompt you to do that. So just like the screenshot, if you haven't picked a location for the screenshots or you haven't picked a save location for your exports, then that will be the first step. You're going to need to give it a name anyway, but let me show you how you adjust those. If you go into the preferences panel in this top left-hand corner, you've got, I need to do that. You've got some file save locations. So you can pick a location for your screenshots and pick a location for your watch list. I'll do that now. And basically it just brings up a watch list file open dialog based on your system. I'm on a Mac, and then you'll see that is listed there. All right. So now if I export my watch list, it's going to pull up a slightly different one with a file save option, and we'll just say this is my temp list from the class, and it just drops it into this generic, I'm in the same folder, and save. Okay. Importing, kind of the same thing in reverse. Click on import, the blue with the double chevrons down, and first you're going to have this little warning. Do you want to replace or add to what you already have? Okay, so I'm just going to say add. And let me pull Monkey's last list that I've downloaded and say open. And now you'll see, it's going, this long load's happening. Okay, so this is great. So let me hit the stop button. If you remember from the intro class, if you've initiated something that's taking longer than you anticipate, or you just, are tired of it or whatever reason, click on the stop. And that's going to arrest any loading action. It can create some anomalies. For example, I've stopped the loading process before it knew what aircraft were flying, etc. So this watch list now isn't populated in the correct way. Okay, so, but let me do this. I'm going to clear all secondary searches. And now, boom, I can reload that watch list, and you can see how much faster that is. Make sense? And now we've got it in a way that I can meaningfully show these buttons here too. So let me hit the maximize, and we're in 2 columns. I thought it'd be more than that. Oh, okay. So let me do this. All right. So I'm gonna let me refresh the list here. I'm gonna close the watch list. I'm gonna open back up again. All right, so I see. Okay, so these are expanded and contracted. All right, so let me Let me clean it up again. I'm just gonna look like there's some anomalies when it came through. Okay, this is what I wanted to see. So I have the show aircraft, only aircraft that are flying toggle off, which is this aircraft icon. And so now I've got a big list, more than I can see on one screen, right? So let me make this a little bit smaller. And now I'm going to maximize, and you'll see that in action. Okay. So yeah, it looks like there's a little bit of a bug here in the viewing. Let me bring this down to something more manageable, maximize again. And it's going to reload the list. All right. There we go.
So right now you're showing everything on Monkey's list.
I am showing
Sure.
everything on Monkey's list that can be shown on screen. So it's maximize the view. These buttons, every button takes memory. And so that's why this
Yeah.
load takes a little bit of time. But I have it in viewing mode where whether it's flying or not, I want it to be in the list. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And so if you turn on the toggle again for show only what's flying, then it's going to redo the list, and then you can see how much more manageable that is. And then if we let me maximize again, now we've got a nice 2-column view. And then if you want to collapse everybody, click on this chevron in the header. I'm going to maximize again. Now we've got it down to a nice, clean, simple view. Let me bring this up a little bit larger. And we've got a nice variety here of, groups that have aircraft that are flying and groups that are not.
And having it, even though I would, let's say, after we're finished here, I might attempt to reload Monkey's list again. I can go in and individually per aircraft type decide which aircraft I want to enable secondary search,
That's right.
because
So
I don't want to crash this thing every time I try to work it.
Right. So as an example, the C-17s, he might have them in a different group. I'm trying to remember. Well, but the point I was getting to is, so let's look at the gray birds. So I'm going to expand the gray birds. I'm going to turn off the show only what's flying. But since everybody else has been collapsed, we should have a nice manageable view. Okay. So I'm going to make this a little bit larger. So now I can see, okay, here's all the gray birds. Nobody's flying. So let me do this. For this group, I'm going to turn on secondary searches by clicking on the magnifying glass with a plus sign in the group header. And now you can see they're all now green. And I'm going to reload the list. And you can see already how much slower that's taking, because
Right.
I'm doing those one, boom, 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 45 times it's going out there and searching. But let's see if we get any more returns.
There we go.
Yeah, still nobody. All right, so I'm going to toggle those off again and collapse them and refresh. Watch list is nice and fast. There we go. Okay. Okay, let me pause for questions. Anything? Either this is so complicated you're all befuddled, or I'm covering this extremely well.
A little bit of each, I think.
Well, yeah, I would agree. And real
Like
quick question, regarding
black
C-17.
aircraft or
Oh, hold on, Jim. Go ahead, Bill.
Wouldn't they be labeled? They're all transports, correct? C-17s have no official element with the military other than transportation. So you can label that as transports, correct?
I don't have enough experience to know if your assumption is absolutely correct. I know
Oh.
that C-17s generally are the heavy lifters. But yes, to answer your question, yeah, I could say, I could go into the C-17 here. Let me make
No,
this
it's okay.
Yeah, we can make that. We can edit the name of the the list,
Right.
and say C-17s
Dash
Uh,
transport.
lift, or
Or
yeah,
lifters.
that's right. Yeah, transport. That's probably better. Yeah. Hit
Good.
enter and it'll do
And-
that.
And one other question, and that'll be it, is a friend of mine's a PIC with Alaska Airlines. And he gives me month after month where he's gonna be going, his designation, his flight information. Granted, it's not military, it's gonna be non-military, but how do you, if you want to add that to your list, how do you do that?
So this is a good question, an interesting problem to work. So when he tells you what his schedule is and provides you all that data, what does he give you exactly?
He gives me, actually emails me a list of his flight numbers and everything else, where he's going, and stuff.
So you get the flight number,
Right.
and that's probably, is that the call sign or the tail number?
No, it's gonna be the call sign.
Right. Okay. So that's going to be the hard part. So really, he's giving you everything that's transient.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so the problem, the difficulty is he probably hops into different aircraft for
Right.
every flight, right?
Correct. Well, not every flight, but yeah.
But
He'll
there's
do
no
a
guarantee.
3-turn day, and 3-turn day, sometimes it's the same aircraft, sometimes he's jumping all over them.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's going to be difficult to preload because he's jumping around different aircraft. And there's
Okay.
no way in the system that I have now.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. So I've been considering, so, ADSB Exchange is my source. That's the main
Right.
data source. There are others, right? FlightAware,
Right.
Flight Radar 24. I know that FlightAware has an API that I've worked with before that can do some of those, like, hey, look up the call sign, because, the flight number can also be different than
Right.
the call sign.
Right.
Which is
Exactly.
another, it's like there's so many, avenues of complexity here. So, yeah, that may be for the future. I'll test the market and see how,
I just thought I'd ask, it being, I never asked anything, so I figured, what the heck, I'll throw it out there.
you bet, Bill. Appreciate it. Hey, Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah, real quick. I see Monkey's List. He's got U2s. Flashbang, I think, is Air Force One. How about, can you get any other black aircraft, high flyers? Do they transmit?
Yeah. Okay. That's a great, a good question. So, what Monkey has determined are these Intel balloons. And there's some debate on what these guys are. I just remember, well, let me show you how I found them in the first place. Okay, so I'm going to minimize the list just so we can see the screen easily. All right, I'm going to go into standard mode. I'm going to switch out of military mode. Okay, and that's going to automatically clear the field and load the watch list because that's up. What I'm going to do is, so since I'm in standard mode, as you may remember, we've got this declutter panel that's going to pop up with the different aircraft classes. I'm going to turn off the normies so we can do a good, nice expanded search. And in the search distance radius, I'm going to pick all. Okay. Now you guys would never know this, right? I only know this because I coded it. The all is a different API call and actually gives you different returns. And it's a big wide net. It gives everything that's flying will come back to me in those returns. And now that I've got the right class off of the normies, let's go ahead and pull that snapshot. So now I'm going to pull the snapshot, wait for that to come back. 15,000 aircraft are flying right now. And that's going to take a while. So I'm going to turn off the normie or the masked aircraft so it'll be a little peppier.
So is all on the screen, or all, meaning, does that all also show things in the, in Asia or the Southern Hemisphere, which we can't see on the map right now.
It's going to show, it's going to pull everything
Everything.
and render everything that is available. So
Okay.
it had grabbed, let's see here, let me make this a little bit smaller, and I'm going to reduce this window so I'm not competing with my own. There we go. All right, so what I'm also going to do is I'm going to turn off my watch list. I'm going to pull that again, just so that the last load. So the last load, just so you know, I don't think I've covered this anywhere else. The last load refers to the last API call that I did. That's kind of the only way I can do that. So if we had secondary searches on, then the last load, as it finishes the whole process, would have been a single entry. So that's why it said last load 1. If I turned off the watch list, now we've got a last load count that's accurate to the all. So 15,398 aircraft are being tracked by ADSB Exchange and thus in the list. And again, yes, to answer your question, it's worldwide. If I kick it off to the side, you can see all these ones, or let's do better. I'll map zoom out completely so we can get the whole planet. And you can see that they're all that are now military.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let me
And I
pull them.
guess the rest of the story is, if we ever would attempt to do that and it comes out with a big goose egg, we know that something has hit the fan.
Yes, the proverbial fan has been wiped out. Okay, so we can see my map has gotten wonky with my loads here, so I'm going to reload the map, and I'm going to bring the size of the aircraft down a little bit. And so what I was trying to do here is, this is how I first found these high flying anomalies. So I did an all, and you kick it off to the side, you can say, oh, look at all these weird aircraft or these weird returns. And they're always going to be NAs. If you turn on the source, they're always mode S. And then this is how you can add. So they're never going to be, because they're mode S, they're never going to be in the general. They only show up in the secondary returns or in this all setup. Make sense? Okay. So yeah, these are all on the list already. Now I can burn. Somebody have a question?
No, that if you showed track and they were moving fast, it's probably not a 90,000 foot balloon.
Right. Yeah. The debate is, are they a balloon that's stationary? Or because sometimes the H balls, the Google balloons, they'll show up with a different, and they'll actually report a type. So I can actually, they don't always report a type, but they will report the category, which is slightly different. And with the category comes out as an airship. So I can give it an icon that refers to a balloon or airship, something like that. Sometimes these weird high flyers, they're always consistent in location. They don't always report the altitude. So that's why the altitude can pop down. And when they are reporting, let me pull the watch list back up. When they do report, they are showing super high, way above any other flight level. Let me turn on the.
Goa,
Yes, sir.
remember the drone that was flying back and forth over California? That's one of those way back. I don't know, it was over a year ago that finally, I guess, crashed or something like that. But that was one of those ones that kept moving back and forth across up and down the coast of California at like 80 or 90,000 feet.
I don't remember that it was that high. It was high, but I don't remember it being in the 80s or 90s. I could be wrong. I remember, what was that called? Yeah, and then it finally it crashed. Was it taken out? Who knows what really happened to that guy? But yeah, and I think it was like 2 hours before setting the world record or something. Just like, it was right on the edge. I mean, that's what made it suspect to me.
That was it.
Yeah, I remember he was doing a bunch of traces that were painting images and stuff, and I was doing posts almost every day. He was so much fun to track. So many people were loving that. Anyway, so back to our question here. So in our group, let me turn on the secondary searches. So you'll notice when I pulled the watch list, there wasn't any, we're not seeing the high flyers. So now I'm going to turn on the secondary searches for that group and reload the list. And let's see if we, all right, did I actually do it? Let me see here. Hold on. Oh, no, I didn't click the button. All right, we'll click the button. Okay, now everybody's green. Now I'm going to reload. And now we should see, yeah, you'll notice the watch lists are taking longer to populate. We're getting to that single searches. And now we're seeing them pop up. Okay, cool. All right, so, oh, one more thing about importing. When you import a list, you can feel fine about importing lists that you know have existing aircraft in your current list. It's not going to double them up. I actually do a check and say, is it already in the list? And if it is in the list, it doesn't add it again. It's just going to update it to whatever new information. If it's assigned to a different group, or if it's got other information, it's going to replace it essentially and not duplicate it. Okay, so that you can kind of get a feel for, like, I can import the same list day after day or over and over, or pull somebody else's list, and it only will reorganize it. It's not going to create duplicates. Okay. All right, so let me clear out the secondary searches and reload. There we go, and collapse that one down. Okay, so the last two buttons in the header are the cloud up and down load and upload and download. So once you have your nice list established, this is the only way to import into your mobile device, is to sort of do it via the cloud. This is one of the very few differences in the mobile version, is there is no save out at this point. You can't export and import from your mobile device, but you can move it to and from the cloud. So if you have an iPad and you've got your watch list on your computer on your desk, then all you need to do is click the upload button. It'll give you a feedback, whether you've, I can do that now. It'll say, yep, your current watch list was saved successfully up to the server. And let me just demonstrate. So I'm going to burn the list, clear, and now download it back from the server. Up gives you that. Do you want to replace it or add? We can do either one at this point since we're a clean list. And then Bob's your uncle. Rent's shaking his head. I think he loves this feature. Yeah.
Yeah. Bob's whose uncle?
There's so many uncles out there named Bob. Okay, cool. Any questions? Wow. We may just end early. So go ahead.
Yeah. So that the downloading from the cloud, I can do that onto my phone.
That's exactly right.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So right now, I'll tell you about what's coming in the future. Right now, there's just sort of a single placeholder for that. Meaning if you upload from any of your devices, it's going to replace the last thing that was uploaded. It's only going to keep your last thing, your last list. Okay, so be careful of that. If you have an empty list or just one on your phone and you push it up to the cloud, now you've sort of replaced what was there before. So you have to go back to your computer, pull your list up, upload it again, etc. Okay. In the future, there will be a way to upload and share publicly. There will also be a way for you to upload and give it a name so that you have a list that's in the cloud, kind of like you have on your computer. But again, this is the interface of that is more complicated than it sounds, right? But so that's coming in the future. And so you'll be able to upload multiple watch lists, and then you'll be able to tag them as either private, only you see it, or public. And then you'll also be able to, once that's done, is you'll be able to say, hey, show me all public watch lists. And then we'll do an upvoting and a downvoting. So you'll be able to see what watch lists are popular. We'll get Monkey to do that, so you don't have to go through the process there. Just so you know, just as an aside, if you go to the monkeyworks us.com, I believe is his website, and then you go into the store, and then you search in the store under SkyGlass, you'll find a free item that is his watch list. You purchase that item and check out. Again, it's free, and then you can download it to your computer. So that's sort of the temporary process that we've got going. We also have that on Discord occasionally, and I've put that up a few times on the SkyGlass crew area on my website, AVR Labs, but those are probably be out of date. He updates his semi-frequently, so then you can always get his last one if you go to his website until we get this functionality built into SkyGlass, which I think will be pretty cool. I think once we do that, we'll get a lot more cross-pollination, and some of the crowdsourced intel will really start, take it to the next level. Very excited about that. I have been blown away by y'all's abilities. Your sleuthing, your tracking stuff, it's fun to create something like this, but man, you guys can run circles around me as far as tracking stuff down and finding stuff. So it's been cool to witness that for sure. Okay, let me see here. I'll pause for questions, but I just want to go down my list, make sure we've covered everything. Yep. Any questions?
Yeah, Gail, you touched on history just a little bit. I wanted to go back and see if you can explain or tell us how we can, if we can, find tracks of historic flights.
Absolutely. All right, great. What is, you want to give me a topic, like a class of aircraft or something?
Let's try a P3.
Excellent. All right. So, and Monkey has no P. Oh, those are the sub hunters. Yep, P3 sub hunters. Okay, excellent. All right. So, when you're in live mode and you max out the traces, we can only go 24 hours. Okay. The way to get deeper historical traces, let me adjust my interface a little bit. There we go. The way to get deeper history on traces is through the flight history reporting. Okay. And there are a few different ways to get to that flight history interface. The first generic way is to go through the advanced options. So the advanced options are this squirrely little icon in the center in the auxiliary button stack that will pop up. These are your advanced options. This first one is time travel mode. The second one is flight history. This next one is choosing a source. And this final one is to customize your colors. As a quick aside, clicking on the customize color, you can actually go in and adjust your color scheme based on even the watch list items, emergency aircraft, all that kind of stuff. You can save them as a whole color scheme and replace them. It's kind of a cool thing. Wow, I'm getting a business call. Okay. Right. So let me close that. Okay. So the first way you can get into flight history is just opening up the flight history panel, which doesn't have anything loaded. I think this is probably the least effective way to do it. The other way to do it is through the HUD. If you click on you got an aircraft loaded in the HUD and you've got this aircraft flight history button there, that's going to pull the flight history for just that single aircraft. Okay. Then what I think you're wanting is there is a flight history option in the group. And what that will do, so I'll do that now. So we've got sub hunters here. I'm going to click on the flight history icon, this hourglass, and it's going to say, okay, we're going to switch modes. We're going to have to burn and clean and all this fun stuff. proceed, say, yep, we're going to proceed. And this pulls up a panel here, and you'll notice this box. Let me back up. Actually, I'm going to close that history panel. I'm going to turn on the advanced. I'm going to hit the flight history window, blow through the check again. Oh, golly. Okay. Well, there you go. Okay, so when you go in sort of in generic flight history mode, you can enter the hex codes of the aircraft to search. If you do this via the watch list, then it pulls all of the hex codes for that entire group and automatically populates it into the flight history input. That's what I was trying to show here. So there's so many here, you can see it's kind of overblown and it's hard to read, but that's what this is. This is all the hex codes from all those aircraft that were in that group. Okay, so then you just dial in how many days you want to look back. Okay, the flight data goes back, where's my list? Goes back March of 2020. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. There's a little bit farther back we can look, but it's not as so from March of 2020 forward for the past 3 years, we've got every 5-second snapshot of all the aircraft that were on scope for ADSB exchange. So you can go back, what is that, 900 and some odd days. Anyway, so let's just do 10 for now. I like to turn on the trace toggle so that as they load, they will paint or render. And then this is the initiate the report. Click on there. And so what it's going first thing it does is goes back all those 10 days and pulls the history of who was flying. And then it goes and starts trolling through those histories of, hey, is one of these aircraft in that, did it fly on that day? If it does, then it goes and does another pull of give me the full trace, and then it renders it on screen.
Can you search for just one hex code, for instance?
Yes, that would be the way to, you can do that a couple different ways. When this process is done, or you can just say stop. In this input window, you can just enter the hex code of that single aircraft. So have it on the clipboard already, or pulled it from some other location, and then you can find it.
Another thing that might be useful, I don't know if you have it, but let's say I wanted to find a P8 that was flying over near the pipeline. If I had a start date and a stop date, you know, if I knew the 5 or 6 days, it'd be nice to put that in, select that one aircraft.
Yes, you can do that now.
Oh, you
Let me
can?
show you how. So by default, so you'll notice a few things that happen when I open up the flight history window. We got a bunch of other, we've switched into standard mode. We actually switched into time travel mode, and then this sort of next step of flight history mode. So this time travel flight history date time picker popped up on screen. Okay. So when you first open this window, or if you reset, the time is now. And then this look back 10 days is now looking back 10 days. If you wanted to search over a specific time period, like let's say starting in January, you would dial that in here, year 2023, month 1, day 31, and then look 30 days. And then you can, so you're defining the start date and then how far back you want to look. Does that make sense?
This is amazing, though.
Glad you like it.
Hope I
So-
can figure this out here before too many more weeks.
So, okay, good. So what this is telling me is we should do a time travel flight history mode deep dive and really work some examples. And I can show you how I did the Nord Stream pull. That was pretty cool. But yeah, so just as this finishes, let me stop it just so we're not going too long, because there was like 93 aircraft or something that it was trying to find. Up to now, it found 23 or 33 flights histories, and in this, in each entry, just so you can know what's going on here, you've got the first known position of that flight, the last known time, start and end, also does a reverse geocode lookup of that lat long and does a, shows that. So this one sort of went out, returned to base. The chevron up and down will pop you to that starting and ending location. So if I click on that, you'll see it's that was in Victoria. This one going on city, let's see, that's going to be over somewhere else in the world. And then ending location. So that, this will show you back and forth. And then this will toggle the trace on and off. Since we already had them all on, they were all listed. And let's see here. And then the final is, will tell you the registration number, the tail number, and then the duration of the how long it was detected. Okay. Often, if you'll see, I haven't coded this to be smart enough to see when it is flying past midnight. So if something is, leaves at 10 p.m., lands at 6 a.m., that's going to be two different traces, right? So it'll go till midnight and then pick up the next day. All right. So it's broken up sort of by day.
It's amazing. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, I thought this was super cool utility wise. I mean, you can see how much Monkey uses it when he's like all these different. So, all right. So what time is it? We've gone an hour and a half. Y'all want to do some more, a little bit more databasey work? We'll do some, the last thing I was going to cover was how to add things from a group. So let's play a little bit more. All right. So, let me back out of this mode. I'm going to turn off flight history. That's going to turn off. Sorry?
Question?
Yes, sir.
For the database, the one thing that I was really interested in is I've been tracking aircraft using their hex codes and they no longer exist. Can I search the database with those hex codes? Is everything that's been flying in that database so that I can go back and find an aircraft that's not flying in that database? Most of them are going to be the Gitmo planes.
It's a great question. So let me tell you about the database. So for those that didn't know, in the auxiliary button panel, we've got this database icon. I clicked on that. Since my database was already loaded, it just popped up the interface. So a little bit of detail on the database itself. This database is crowdsourced from the ADSB Exchange community. Okay. Some of that data, and so I haven't engaged with this, but they've got a Discord server that's very active where they do this maintaining of the database. So plane spotters will go out and find something new, or they'll be searching online, or they'll pull from some other source or whatever. They'll do some intel gathering. They found a new tail number, registration, or hex code, and they'll, in that Discord server, be saying, hey, these are new aircraft, etc. And then on a nightly basis, that's updated and refreshed and made available through the ADSB Exchange source. And so that's where this comes from. This is where I can pull it from. So when you hit refresh database, it basically goes out and says, give me the one that was refreshed last night or this morning, and it downloads that one. Let me do that now, since last time I pulled it was 6 days ago. So hit refresh. It's going to say, yep, we've just pulled the data. You want to load it again? Say, yep, okay. And you can see this is loading all that data, 500 and some thousand records. Some of this data is from FOIA requests of the LAD aircraft, the masked aircraft. So there's several ways of this getting into this sort of database, but I don't have any control over it. And that's about as far as I know about how all that stuff is sourced. Okay. If it's, I mean, the crowdsourcing is phenomenally good. So most likely these aircraft are in the database. If you have an example of a hex code, drop it in chat and I'll search on it now. While you're doing that, I'll go further here. Okay, so one topic that's pretty hot right now is these surveys, right? So let me do this. I'm going to type in survey. I'm going to do this in all caps. The owner operator is case sensitive, and most entries are all caps, just so you know. I'm I'm going to change this to owner operator. I'm going to absolutely have partial match on so that it's going to match anything that has an owner operator with survey in the name. Thank you, Florida. I got that Xcode. And then I'm going to limit returns, turn that on as 100 so we don't get a runaway search. And then click and I'm going to click search. All right, so we definitely maxed the return. So next thing I'm going to do is make this, let's say 250, clear and search again. What I'm doing is I'm casting that limit returns net out a little bit farther so that I get something that's under that number. So now I've got 123 returns. I know I'm good. So now you can see we've got some interesting stuff. So this is kind of how I troll and pull through. You kind of see what I do. A couple different ways to do this. You can just stop here and like, well, I want to add all this anybody that's got survey in the list, or you can do it a little more, precisely. As an example, this is interesting. We've got Miami-Dade County. It's going to be local to me, Department of Transportation, ePublic Works survey section. I could pull this guy, add him to the list. He'd go into an uncategorized, or we can look farther here. Okay, so let's say aerial surveys. That's interesting. Well, my point is so let's grab Keystone Aerial Surveying and then clear the list and then paste that entry into the owner operator and now search. And now I'm going to get only the Keystone survey group. And we've got 23 in there, what I'm assuming is their fleet, right? So now I'm going to go into, next thing I'm going to open my watch list. I'm going to burn it just so we're starting from scratch. All right, so now I've got an empty list and I'm going to go here and I'm going to type in, I'm going to paste that group name again, and I'm going to back up some of the older, or the, just keep it Keystone Aerial so the group name is nice and small. And I'm going to say add as group. And now I'm going to close this window. So now we've got all 23 of that fleet. Okay, so now my first instinct would be, well, let's fill out some of the data. So as you can see, we've got, because it was from the database, we knew its type. So let me just look, we got to teach. So these are Cessnas. We got a drone in the mix. Okay, cool. So one next step would be, well, let's do a backtrack and see where some of the, have any of these flown in the last 60 days. So I'm going to hit the backtrack. It's going to go load the last 60 days of hex codes that were flying, and then go through and list if they were active or not. So this may take a beat. So Jim, I'm seeing you had a question earlier about U2s and SR71s, things that don't squawk. So if they're not squawking, they're not going to be picked up by a feeder, and they're not going to make it into the ADSB exchange list, and not going to get to me or you through SkyGlass. Okay, everything really, are they transponding on ADSB or Mode S? Thus, they're going to be picked up by a feeder and brought into the system. Okay, so I did the backtrack. I'm going to reload, and let's see. Nobody's flying. Not surprising. And let's turn on the. All right, so I'm not seeing anything. Let me burn and try that again. Okay. So yeah, we did get some last known locations. So some of these have been active. So now we can do a flight history and say proceed. And since we've got an old list in here, let me clear the list, clear the report, and then let's look back 10 days. Oh, there we go. Good. That's Sparks, Nevada. Yeah. Oh, no, that is on. Okay. Okay, here we go. Now we can see them on screen. So what I'm doing now is I'm just tuning the sizes so that I can see distinct traces. Like if we get in here and the sizing is too big, they get kind of kind of all over the place, especially if they're doing these patterns. But there you can see the pattern real clear. This guy was definitely hand jockey. That's not autopilot. Unless the transponder was just, the feed or the altitude wasn't reporting as well. No, that looks like a hand flight to me. Anyway. Okay. So in that little bit, we've covered how to open up the database. Oh, that's nice. Look at that shoestring. Very cool. Can you all see that okay? That's reading okay? Yeah, there we go. Nice. Again, just to review, the color of the traces are based on the aircraft type. One sort of weak point in SkyGlass right now is it's not easy to adjust the type unless the only way to do the type color adjustment is from the type list panel, which means it's got to be flying. So I recognize that's a bit like you can't do it from here. That will be added in a future version of SkyGlasses to be able to adjust the colors while you're in the flight history mode. But anyway, okay. And then so we showed the database, how to pull the database as a group, kind of pull the thread on the owner operator a little bit, adding it to its own group, and then running a flight history from that group. And this is still going. Wow. Ooh, California. This guy's active in California too. How fun. We may want to make Monkey aware because I don't think this was in the list, huh? In his set rep today with a. All right, Keystone aerial survey. We're gonna have to get that on his radar. Anyway, did that answer your question? I think that was Jim's, yeah? Okay, great. Cool. Or maybe that was at Arizona DJ. Anyway, okay, cool. Well, I'll open it up for any more questions. Anything else? We're kind of winding down.
Yeah, how about that
Oh,
X code?
all right. Let me pull that, copy. All right, so I'm going to hit stop to arrest that list. So I'm going to clear the list just so we don't have to come back to it later. Close, open up the database again, clear. I'm going to drop the hex code and change the type to ICAO hex code and search. Boom, there it is. B742. I'll make this a little bit larger.
Okay.
Were you expecting something different?
Nope. I thought it might be Air Force One. So it was a in that-
ADFDF F9. I think I know that there's many, right? There's many that are that type of Air Force-ish, Air Force, that'll hold the president. Where's my list? ADFDF8 is the main one. F9, I think that's the alternate, but that you're right in the right zone of hex codes. Yeah.
got
So
it.
if we wanted to do that, so let's just work the process. I'm going to add it to the watch list. So that's going to go into unassigned group. I'm going to close the database interface, open up my watch list. Oh, what happened? All right, so open up the database. That's added. Oh, there it is. Okay, let me reload. All right, so I think something happened with this aerial group. It's giving me a little bit of something's hung up. So I'm going to research that. Keystone. Okay. All right. So I'm going to burn that list or that group, go back to the database. I've added him in. Oh, he's going in the Keystone Aerial group. Oh, that's why I wasn't showing up. My bad. Okay. So let's make this AF and add him again. There we go. Okay. So when you're adding from the database, if it has a group name, it's going to go into that group name. All right, good. Wasn't a bug, just a just a feature. Okay, so now I'm going to run the flight history of Air Force. What we're thinking is number 2, and drop into flight history mode. And let's do, since this is a single aircraft, it will be go pretty quickly. We'll do 30 days, and from now and go. All right, so it's pulling something, but I think it is still trying to get, there we go. Starting to fill in some information. And let me bump up the size a little bit. Okay, so it's still working on some of these. Yeah, just so you know, that is probably just some pattern work, doing some test flying up and down in the pattern. Then they obviously made some hops around. You can see how low these are too. And some of these, like this first one, it doesn't look like it was able to, it got a location, but something else dropped out. So bugging the data, I'm not able to process it, which is a good note for me. All right, did that answer your question, Florida? Good enough?
Yep, pretty much. I'm trying to track the Gitmo flights, and some of them are gone, but I have the hex codes for them, so I want to track them down on the database and find out in a history where they've been and when.
Okay. Yeah, good. So I would be in the, oh, so let me mention this too. When you're in the database and like, let's say a search on AF9, and that's in my return, right? It's already in a current return. Then I can change it to F8, whoops, and search again, and it's adding to the return. Okay. So this is how you can like you can build a list of returns and then add all these as a group. Okay. You have to be a little, judicious about how you're doing this, but this is one way you can do that. Be aware if you're looking for C-17s and you have a partial match on type, it's going to return all the Cessna 172s, right? So you got to be careful to not mix what your returns are. But like in the same way we did the survey, you could pull a couple of those, survey companies out, put them on a notepad or something, and then go and paste them in certain and build a huge list and then add them all as a group. Does that make sense?
Can you pull Gitmo?
No, but that's a call sign, right? You're looking for.
Yep.
Yeah. So no, you can only search on hex code, registration of the tail number, the aircraft type, or the owner operator.
It'd be interesting too. Supposedly they're moving from Gitmo to Guam and one other location. So it'd be interesting to see if those are really showing up.
Yeah. So again, remembering how this data is sourced, it's all from feeders. There are no feeders out in the middle of the Atlantic or Pacific. So this is why you don't get good flight history over big bodies of water, because you're only going to get a couple hundred miles from shore that the feeders are going to be able to pull that data and then put it into the system. But you should still get the start and stop, assuming there's one in Guam. I haven't actually checked on that. There is a link for, you can look at all the different feeders in the ADSB Exchange network and see where there's coverage and where there's open spots. But anyway. Okay. Any last questions? Covered a lot.
I have
Yes.
one
Yes.
pertaining to 92-9000. So obviously on this list that came up, there's 3 entries that don't have a discrete start end location. Could that be that that whomever has control over what is shown on that particular VIP aircraft, are they able to just scrub that?
Yeah, so no, as far as I understand, no. Once it
Okay.
makes it into the database, I'm sorry, into the flight history system of ADSB Exchange, they don't filter and they don't scrub as far as I know. So my guess is that this is a bug that I haven't accounted for, that somehow, so this couldn't get processed. It found a entry, but it wasn't able to process the beginning or ending or the trace itself, and something bugged out and it moved on to the next record. It doesn't mean that it was scrubbed or something like that.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to go check this out and look a little deeper. It's not totally uncommon. Looks like 3 of these of the 5.
Right.
Yeah, it could have been that they just dropped off or the data is weird in some way. But anyway, I mean, this is definitely bugging my part of the system. Yeah, the flight history and the type travel are, not absolutely baked. They're pretty good for the first. I think this is the second implementation that I've done, but they're pretty early in the development of SkyGlass for sure. I'll be working on it, making it better. Any other questions?
If you conduct a search and it comes up on your list and you find out, okay, it's in your watch list, but you don't know where it is, what's the easiest way to get to it or find it?
Yeah, that's a soft spot.
Okay.
That's definitely so. I've had the same thing, like, where is it in my list? And especially if it's not flying, you're like, where is it? Yeah, that's something that I've thought about. I want to make one, I'd like to add it into the HUD so that if it's flying and you can put it up on the HUD, it'll say what group it's in. That's one addition. And then there's is it in my watch list somewhere? So I guess just to give you some kind of a solution, Ian, you can export your list and then open that JSON file as a text file in a text editor, and then search on that hex code. And then you'll be able to see the entry and you'll kind of be able to decode, I see now it's in this group, because it'll be listed there as a JSON file. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Until I can get it coded in, because that's, you're not the first one that's mentioned that, and that I feel your pain. I've been there too. Where is it in the list? There isn't. I'm trying to think if there's another way. You can force it into a new group from the database, but that's not very direct either. All right. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. The other approach would be save out your list, clear your list. So you start from scratch, find it in the database, add it in as a group, right? And then bring your, and then save that out. I know this is a little convoluted, but you save that out, bring in your old list, and then bring in the new save. And that way, and then you'll know exactly, because it'll override, like when you import it again, it's going to move it from whatever old group it was back into the new group. That would be an end run. Yeah. Good question. I know that's convoluted. I'll work on it. It'll hopefully be in the next version. Yeah.
All right.
Good suggestions though. I love the feedback. Very good. I'm going to make a note of that just so I can tag it. All right. Where is it? Yeah. When I first created the watch list, I mentioned this in the intro class, I thought, 50, 60 at the most, not thousands. But once you have access to the database, that list can grow fast. All right.
So being new on here, have you ever thought of, because I've got 2 screens going, is it a possibility to get your watch list and your type list on one screen and still have your other screen free in terms of real estate? I feel bad asking you that, having known yesterday how long you took the code. I'm like, oh geez, do I even ask something like that?
So it's impossible for me to have I mean, nothing's impossible, right? It's not a no, it's not, I don't know how yet to pull a window outside the main window. I think it may be possible, but I haven't figured out how to do that. So everything sort of has to be on one window. You
What about
can,
tabbing?
what's that?
What about a tab in that window?
Oh, you mean like for a tab watch list and then type list on a different tab?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's possible. The next thought was really to, or my next, I think, iteration would be to not have the type list and the watch list be anchored to the left, but like the database window, be able to free float them, right? And then
that'd be good.
resize them
Yeah.
independently. I think that would be able to, that would get you there, right?
Yeah.
It's the tracking of it, like in maintaining the last position, that gets a little more complicated. It's all doable. It just takes time to test and debug.
Right.
But that's sort of the next evolution, is to make them independent and sizable and movable. I think that might get you there. What I thought you were getting to is you can, especially easily on a Mac, you can run multiple instances of SkyGlass.
Well, I use my iPad for one, so I use my iPad and have the
Yeah.
screen up there kind of thing. So, all right.
Okay. Now
That's
the caveat, I mean, we're getting outside of like what's normal practice, but
Yeah.
the caveat is that you're gonna introduce, you're taunting the devil here, because the both instances that are running are going to be looking at the same preference file. And anytime you do anything within SkyGlass, change a setting, reload something, add something somewhere else, it goes back and refreshes and updates that preference file. So if they both try at the same time, that could crash the preference file, and you'll need to refresh SkyGlass, burn it and start from the defaults. But it is possible. I've done it before.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for
What
your
I would
time.
do is have both refreshes and staggered, and not so fast, like go 1 minute a piece and kind of start one, so that they don't try and compete with each other. But that would be, but they're gonna be pulling the same preference file. They're gonna be pulling the same watch list file. They're not truly independent, instances, but they're kind of that way, pseudo independent. Anyway,
Okay.
good
All right.
question.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, guys, anything else? Any other last questions? Okay, cool. Well, let me just do a quick recap of what we covered today. We covered all the different ways to add to the watch list, and then some. We covered all of the different watch list buttons as far as the aircraft entry itself. We covered the different buttons and the functionality of the different Watchlist Group headers. We talked about all the different functions and buttons in the Watchlist header itself and the auxiliary one, and how to turn that on and off. We talked deeply about the secondary searches. We covered how to add things from the database, and we did some great Q&A. And then we actually expanded and did some flight history stuff, which was fun. So if you need to reach me, best way to do it is from the avrlabs.com website. You can submit a support form. That's the longer way. The fastest way to get to me is using the need help button on the bottom right. That opens up a chat window that goes right to my phone. So that's the fastest way to reach me if it's within sort of, normal business hours. And if you want to support SkyGlass and the development, please consider joining the Patreon channel. Patrons always have a place in all of these live sessions, regardless of how full we are. So that's sort of a nice perk. And I really want to say thank you for being here today. Let me stop share so I can look at everybody. There we go. Thank you for being here. I hope you got a lot out of it. Really appreciate all the suggestions. Got a thumbs up. If you want to, feel free to leave some feedback in the chat, because that I can review later. And yeah, really appreciate everybody's attention today. Good stuff. All righty. Okay, well then I'm going to end it there. Everybody be well. Thanks, Crystal. Cheers,
Bye,
everyone. All right, bye for now.